If you had a physical ticket that granted you exactly one chance to completely undo a single moment in your past, would you use it?
Oh, wow.
Right. And more importantly, what would happen to the rest of your life if you did?
That is, I mean, that is the impossible question,
It
isn't it?
really is. I want you to just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because we all have those moments playing on a loop in our heads, a missed opportunity or a terrible
A
argument.
devastating accident, maybe.
Exactly. Or just a choice we made when we were too young, or honestly just too scared to know any better.
Right.
So if you could hold a physical, tangible object in your hand, something that looks like a cheap roll-off ticket you'd get at a local carnival, and use it to rewind time to erase your single biggest regret, would you actually do it?
I feel like everyone's initial reaction is yes, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Wipe the slate clean.
But then you really start to think about it
You'd
and
be terrified.
completely terrified of what else you might accidentally erase along with it. It's the
Exactly.
ultimate fantasy, but the reality of that power, if it actually existed, is paralyzing.
It really is. And that incredibly compelling, entirely impossible question is exactly what we are diving into today. We have a massive stack of source material sitting in front of us today, and it is centered entirely around the novel Once and Again by the New York Times bestselling author Rebecca Serle.
Who is just fantastic at this specific genre.
Oh, she's brilliant. You probably know her from her other hits like In 5 Years or One Italian Summer or Expiration Dates. She has this very specific mastery of taking these slightly magical, high-concept premises and using them as a scalpel to dig into very raw, very real human reality.
Which is exactly what makes this particular story so rich to dissect. Because while the premise relies on magic, this concept of silver ticket passed down through generations of women in a single family, the story itself is not a fairy tale.
No, definitely not.
The magic is really just a mechanism. It's a magnifying glass held up to how these characters cope with trauma.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly that. We aren't just going to give you a summary of a magical realism story. We really want to get into the weeds of how this book uses a fantastical premise to explore some incredibly grounded and painful human experiences.
Right.
We're going to be looking closely at the grueling, isolating reality of infertility. We're going to examine the heavy, invisible weight of generational secrets.
The kind that quietly dictate a family's dynamic for decades.
Exactly. And ultimately, we're going to explore the terrifying, beautiful process of accepting that life moves only forward.
It is such a profound exploration of grief and control and acceptance. The ticket itself forces the characters, and by extension you, the reader, to confront your own philosophies on living and suffering. It asks us if pain is something to be eradicated, or if it's the necessary payment for a life that actually means something.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to set the stage for us here because it's impossible to understand the weight of this silver ticket in the modern day without understanding the exact circumstances of its origin. Where does this magic actually come from?
So the origin story takes us far away from the sun-drenched beaches of modern-day California, where much of the main narrative actually takes place. It begins in 1920s Odessa, Ukraine, with the protagonist's great-grandmother, a little girl named Irina.
And we really need to sit with the setting for a moment because this is not a gentle, whimsical origin story.
Yeah.
This is a harsh, terrifying, deeply dangerous reality.
Extremely dangerous.
Okay.
Irina is just 7 years old, and she is living through a period of violent anti-Jewish pogroms that accompanied the Russian Civil War. Her family is poor. They didn't have the wealth that offered a modicum of stability or escape to others. Her father is a cobbler making a meager living.
There is just instability and fear everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
The Jewish population in the region is rapidly declining. People are fleeing in terror. But Irina's family is still there. They're trapped by circumstance.
Yeah.
And she is at that incredibly fragile age where she is young enough to still believe in the concept of magic, but old enough to have witnessed the grim, unforgiving realities of a war zone.
It's such an unbearable burden for a 7-year-old. And because her mother suffers from these severe, debilitating migraines and is often bedridden in a darkened room, little Irina is the one tasked with making the deliveries for her father's cobbler shop.
Right.
She makes these deliveries late at night, slipping through the cold, dark streets, relying on the fact that she's small and can go unnoticed. I mean, it's a literal survival tactic.
Precisely. And this specific environment is where the inciting incident of the entire generational saga occurs. One freezing night, Irina is sent out to deliver a repaired pair of shoes to a feared neighborhood woman named Hinda.
Hinda?
Now, Hinda is the quintessential neighborhood outcast. the kind of figure that local children tell terrifying stories about. Rumors swirl around her that she hates children, that her body is covered in weeping boils, that she has snakes for hair underneath her thick head covering.
Just nightmare fuel for a 7-year-old.
Exactly. She is universally avoided by the community.
But Irina's father has a very specific, unshakable moral philosophy. He tells Irina that Hinda is a paying customer, and regardless of the rumors, she must be treated with respect and kindness. But it goes deeper than that, doesn't it?
It does.
His core guiding belief in life is incredibly simple. People need their shoes. Even if they can't pay right away, even if the world is falling apart around them, he keeps a ledger. He operates on a foundation of fundamental human dignity. He fixes the shoes because people need to walk.
What's fascinating here is that philosophy is so crucial to what happens next, because the ticket is born out of an act of pure, unfiltered empathy. Irina arrives at Hinda's door. It's the dead of winter. She's shivering, completely exposed to the elements. Hinda finally answers the door, and she is this gnarled, intimidating figure. And Hinda looks down at the little girl and tells her the flat, unapologetic truth: I have no money for you.
Now, Irina has strict instructions from her mother to collect the payment. Her family is starving. Every single coin is the difference between eating and going hungry. If she doesn't get the money, they suffer.
Right.
But Irina looks down at Hinda's feet. They are bare on the freezing floorboards. And Irina, deeply internalizing her father's uncomplicated empathy, just hands over the shoes. She believes down to her bones that it's what her father would have done. She doesn't judge Hinda. She doesn't demand payment or threaten her. She just sees someone who needs shoes, and she helps her.
And that single act of grace, which is perhaps the first unprompted kindness Hinda has experienced in decades, completely illuminates the old woman's face. In exchange for the shoes, Hinda retreats into her home and brings out a small, unassuming wooden box. Inside the box is a silver ticket.
I love how the source material describes the physical appearance of this ticket. It's not some glowing, ethereal crystal pulsing with ancient energy. It looks like a cheap roll-off ticket you'd get at a county fair to ride the Ferris wheel.
It's exactly an inch by an inch.
Yeah, it grounds this incredible world-altering magic in an object that is so incredibly mundane, so ordinary and fragile, it doesn't look like a miracle.
Which makes it all the more potent. Irina asks what the ticket is for, and Hinda tells her very simply that it is for undoing the past. And then she shuts the door. Irina goes back out into the cold and walks home utterly terrified to tell her parents she didn't get the desperately needed money.
But her father, completely true to his nature, isn't angry when she confesses. He just nods and says good people need their shoes.
Such a beautiful moment.
It is. But the relief of that moment is incredibly short-lived. The very next morning, the brutal, violent reality of their world shatters that quiet moment of grace. Irina comes downstairs to find her mother rocking back and forth at the kitchen table, completely inconsolable. Her father's shop has been completely looted, the door smashed in, and her father is gone, taken in the night.
It is their absolute worst fear realized. In Eastern Europe, during that specific historical moment, if a Jewish man was taken from his home in the night, he did not return. The finality of it was absolute.
That's just devastating.
And Irina, standing in the ruins of her father's life's work, remembers the small wooden box. She remembers the ticket. She runs upstairs, opens the box, takes out the silver ticket, presses it tightly between her small palms, and thinks of the day before. She thinks of her father, his dirty cobbler's apron, his toothy smile. She focuses every ounce of her childhood belief and her absolute desperation into this mundane little object.
And the magic is real. It works.
It actually works.
The air shifts, the world rewinds, and she turns time back to the day before, to when her father was still standing in the shop. Armed with the terrifying knowledge of what is to come that night, she acts. She doesn't explain the magic to them. She just guides her family to hide in the small, cramped attic above her bedroom.
They wait in the dark.
They hear the men come. The shop is still violently looted. The glass is still shattered, but the family is hidden. They are safe. When they finally emerge, her father sweeps her up, calling her a brilliant, blessed child, telling her she saved them.
But, and this is the crucial, devastating, but that defines the thematic trajectory of the entire story. The ticket doesn't save him forever.
Right.
He still dies shortly after.
Right.
The source material is clear on this point. The ticket is an inheritance of survival.
Yeah.
Yes, but it immediately teaches little Irina a harsh, unyielding lesson. You can rewind time, you can dodge a specific bullet on a specific Tuesday, but you cannot permanently outrun mortality. You cannot cheat death entirely.
It's an incredible setup for the rest of the narrative. The ticket is established right from page 1 as a massive burden wrapped in a miraculous gift. After Irina uses it to rewind that day, the physical ticket vanishes from her hands. But years later, when her daughter is born, a new identical silver ticket miraculously appears in the wooden box.
It just shows up.
Yeah, and again, when her granddaughter is born,
Yep.
it becomes a literal generational inheritance. For every female descendant born into this family line, a single, unused ticket appears in the box.
I think it's worth pausing to really analyze that concept of generational inheritance. We all inherit things from our ancestors, don't we?
Absolutely, we do.
We inherit physical traits, maybe a disposition towards certain illnesses, maybe wealth or crippling debt. But we also inherit invisible things. We inherit generational anxieties, inherited traumas, specific coping mechanisms that our grandparents developed to survive wars or famines. For this family, the ticket is a literal, tangible manifestation of those inherited survival mechanisms. It's the ultimate safety net passed down through the bloodline.
It's the inheritance of ultimate power, but also the inheritance of an impossible, paralyzing choice. I mean, think about it. If you only have one single chance to undo a mistake in your entire life, when do you play your card? How bad does something have to be to justify using your only safety net?
Exactly. And that impossible tension is what launches us out of 1920s Ukraine and brings us crashing into the modern day.
Yes, let's jump forward a century. We leave Odessa and we meet our modern-day protagonist, Lauren Novak. Lauren is a CPA. She's an accountant who finds deep comfort in stability, reliability, and helping people budget their lives to avoid financial catastrophe. She is deeply practical. She lives in this charming, if slightly drafty, 1958 bungalow in West Hollywood with her husband Leo and their cat P.
And Leo is the complete opposite of Lauren in almost every measurable way. He's a director of photography, a DP working in television and film. He's a nomad by trade, a creative who sees the world as a fluid canvas waiting to be captured through a lens. While Lauren is meticulously organized and finds solace in spreadsheets and predictable numbers, Leo is gregarious, a bit messy, and entirely comfortable in the chaotic, unpredictable world of freelance production.
As the story opens, Leo is actually away. He's on a flight to New York to interview for what could be a massive career-changing job on a new network TV show called Big Guys. It would mean a steady, reliable income, a massive step up in the industry. But while Leo is 30,000 feet in the air, Lauren is back in their Los Angeles bungalow, wide awake at 4 a.m., furiously refreshing his flight status on her phone.
Yeah.
And we quickly, painfully learn that this anxiety, this complete inability to sleep isn't really about his flight at all. It's a symptom of a much deeper, more exhausting trauma that they are both currently drowning in.
They are drowning in the trauma of severe infertility. And I have to say, the source material details this experience with a level of unflinching granular honesty that is rare. Lauren and Leo have been actively trying to have a baby since before they were even married. They aren't just having a hard time. They are dealing with the diagnosis of premature ovarian failure.
Which means her body isn't matching her chronological age.
Right. For anyone who hasn't been trapped in that specific medical waiting room, Lauren's fertility is functioning like someone much, much older. She's tracking data points that dictate her entire existence. She mentions a language of low ovarian reserve, high FSH, and low AMH.
Those acronyms become your whole world.
Completely. FSH is follicle-stimulating hormone, and AMH is anti-Müllerian hormone. Essentially, these are the cold, hard, biological indicators of a woman's remaining egg count. Lauren isn't just dealing with a vague feeling of bad luck. She is staring at clinical data telling her that her biological clock is rapidly winding down ahead of schedule.
And because of that diagnosis, they have been put through the absolute ringer. The text outlines it: 2 different fertility clinics, 6 IUIs, which is intrauterine insemination, and 4 agonizing invasive egg retrievals. And after all of that physical and emotional trauma, they have never ended up with a single viable embryo, not one.
The toll of that repeated failure is catastrophic, both emotionally and financially.
Let's talk about the financial side first, because the book doesn't shy away from how expensive it is to try and buy a miracle. They aren't wealthy. Their budget is described as razor thin. Their savings are completely tapped out from the previous rounds of IVF. At one point, they scraped together enough money for one last $600 Hail Mary IUI cycle. And Lauren realizes that the $600 they just spent was supposed to cover their basic utility bills.
Wow.
They are literally risking keeping the lights on for a fraction of a percent of a chance at a pregnancy.
But the psychological toll is infinitely worse than the empty bank accounts. The isolation described in the text is profound. I really appreciate the analogy the author uses, or at least the feeling the text evokes, about what it's like to be on this journey Well, everyone around you is easily getting pregnant.
The train analogy, yes,
Yeah.
it's so visceral. Infertility, as Lauren experiences it, is like boarding a commuter train. You get on thinking you're heading to the exact same destination as everyone else in your life, parenthood, a family, the next natural chapter.
Yeah.
But 7 stops later, as all your friends and peers are happily getting off at the expected stations with their strollers and diaper bags, you look out the window and realize the train hasn't stopped for you.
It just keeps going.
You are still moving and you are traveling somewhere totally unknown, a dark, lonely place that you can't easily come back from.
It perfectly captures the alienation. And the text points a very sharp critical lens at the multi-billion-dollar fertility industry itself and the culture surrounding it.
Yeah.
It heavily critiques the toxic positivity that suffocates women struggling to conceive, the constant well-meaning but devastating refrain of just relax or have you tried acupuncture, and these specific herbs or your words have power. You have to manifest it.
I find that toxic positivity so insidious because an industry that profits off hope is one thing, but the underlying message it sends to women like Lauren is deeply damaging. It implies that a biological cellular failure is somehow their own psychological fault.
Right.
If you just relaxed more, if you just wanted it the right way, if you just meditated harder, it would happen. It turns a medical condition into a personal failing.
Exactly. It places the burden of a biological malfunction squarely on the woman's mindset. And there is an absolutely gut-wrenching scene in the source material that illustrates the cruelty of this cycle perfectly. I think we need to walk through it to really understand Lauren's state of mind.
We do. It's the scene in Party City. Lauren is out running errands, standing in the aisle of a Party City buying tissue paper. She has taken a home pregnancy test earlier that day. Actually, she took 3. And for the first time in her life, she got a positive result.
2 pink lines.
2 pink lines.
Right.
3 times over. She is standing in this bright plastic store surrounded by balloons and party favors, finally allowing herself to believe that the nightmare is over. It's happening. And then her phone rings. It's the nurse from the fertility clinic with her official blood test results.
And the nurse tells her she's not pregnant. The positive tests were an illusion. It was just the trigger shot medication, the synthetic hormones she had to inject to stimulate ovulation lingering in her system longer than usual. Her HCG levels, the hormone that indicates pregnancy, are at a 2.7. A viable pregnancy requires a level of at least 5. She missed the threshold by a fraction of a number.
The emotional whiplash of that moment is staggering. She's surrounded by piñatas and birthday banners, realizing her body has essentially tricked her. And she has to go home and tell Leo. Leo, who has rushed back to the bungalow thinking they are finally going to be parents. He walks in the door ready to celebrate, and Lauren has to shatter him all over again.
Oh, man.
She describes feeling this overwhelming, crushing sense of guilt. Not just sadness, but guilt. Guilt that she got his hopes up, guilt that her body fundamentally refuses to do this one supposedly natural thing.
And we see how this relentless cycle of hope and despair has completely mutated their marriage. Intimacy is gone. Sex is transformed from a joyful, spontaneous exploration of their love into a clinical, heavily scheduled obligation. It has become a rebellion against her own failing body. The romance has been replaced by thermometers, timed ovulation windows, and injections.
And Leo is exhausted. He is deeply in love with his wife. He is a supportive partner, but he is completely drained by the medicalization of their marriage. He wants to stop. He was ready to get off the ride. He literally asks her, his voice breaking, how much more of this are we supposed to put ourselves through? He wants to prioritize the living, breathing woman in front of him over the ghost of a biological child they may never have.
But for Lauren, stopping feels like an impossible failure. It feels like a betrayal of everything they've suffered through. She is fueled by what the text brilliantly calls the absolute idiocy of hope, that bottomless well of it that somehow inexplicably refreshes after every single devastating failure. For her, the answer to Leo's question is always, as much as it takes to get our baby. She feels she has no choice. If she had a choice, they wouldn't be in this agonizing situation to begin with.
So this creates a massive silent chasm between them. Leo is begging to let go of the sinking ship to save what's left of their relationship. Lauren feels like he is abandoning her on the battlefield, asking her to give up on her deepest, most primal desire. And with Leo away in New York chasing this new job, and Lauren receiving the undeniable physical proof that her period has arrived yet again, signaling the definitive end of another failed cycle, she is finally pushed past her breaking point.
Yeah.
The bungalow feels like a tomb of failure. She needs an escape. She needs to go somewhere she feels entirely safe. So she packs a bag and flees to her childhood home.
And that retreat takes her out of the claustrophobic, heavy atmosphere of West Hollywood and out to the wide open, breezy expanse of Malibu, specifically to 31382 Broad Beach Road. Now, this house isn't just a setting, it's practically a character in its own right. It is deeply entwined with the family's history and the quiet humming legacy of the silver tickets.
It's the quintessential noisy, loving family home. Let's talk about the family waiting for her there because the dynamics are fascinating. We meet her parents, Dave and Marcella. Dave is this eternal, optimistic, deeply tanned surfer. He's also a successful mystery writer who publishes under the pen name Irene Stills. He is gregarious. He knows every single person on the beach. He leaves his surfboard dripping on the deck, and he is deeply, profoundly in love with his wife.
And Marcella Lauren's mother is a study in intense contrast to Dave. Where he is loose and optimistic, she is anxious, tightly wound, hyper-practical, and incredibly protective of Dave, almost suffocatingly so. She hovers over him, waits for him on the deck with warm towels the second he gets out of the surf, and seems to carry this low-level, constant hum of worry about his well-being. The dynamic between them is intense. They orbit each other, completely functioning almost as a single unit.
And then holding court over all of them, there is Sylvia, Lauren's 91-year-old grandmother, the matriarch, the daughter of Irina from Odessa. Sylvia is wild. She is reckless in the best possible way. She categorically refuses to lock the doors to the beach house, which drives the anxious Marcella absolutely crazy.
I love Sylvia.
She's the best. Sylvia's lived an enormous life. She lived in Finland with a rock star. She marched in the streets with Martin Luther King Jr. She was engaged 4 different times, but proudly never married. She tells anyone who will listen that being alive is everything. Anything beyond that is pure gravy. She is a free spirit in the truest, most unapologetic sense.
So under this one roof, or at least in this one immediate family, we have 3 generations of women, Sylvia, Marcella, and Lauren. Each of them holds or has held one of these magical silver tickets, and each of them is dealing with the psychological weight of that potential power very differently. But Lauren's sudden retreat to Malibu isn't just about seeking comfort from her family. It's about a subconscious desire to return to a specific, safe era of her life. And that desire is perfectly embodied by the person she literally runs into on the beach, Stone Morrow.
Stone Morrow, the first love. The one who knew her before everything got so complicated. They dated for a full decade from the time they were 15 until they were 25. He's back in Malibu because his beloved stepmother Bonnie is dying of cancer. Seeing Stone standing on the sand is like stepping into a living, breathing time machine for Lauren.
There is a real psychology to why we look backward when the present hurts too much. When a person is in immense, unfixable pain, like Lauren is dealing with failing IVF, a deeply strained marriage, and a physical body she feels has betrayed her core purpose, the past looks incredibly seductively safe.
Oh, absolutely.
Stone isn't just an old boyfriend she still has chemistry with. He represents an entire era of Lauren's life before the trauma began. He knew her when her body worked, before money was a constant source of panic, when life was, as the text beautifully puts it, pure possibility.
The contrast between the 2 men in her life right now is so stark, it's almost blinding. Leo is the difficult, painful, complicated present. Leo represents medical bills, timed intercourse, devastating grief, and difficult conversations about quitting. Stone represents the sun-drenched, uncomplicated, golden-hued past. He's surfing, he smells like the ocean. He's intrinsically linked to the dilapidated Greek house on the beach where they used to hang out as carefree teenagers. He's a walking escape hatch from her reality.
And it's highly significant that Dave, her ever-optimistic father, has a specific surfing mantra that he taught Lauren when she was a little girl learning to navigate the waves. Paddle, don't scream. The ocean is a woman, baby. Never turn your back on her.
Paddle, don't scream. That is so good.
It's perfect. Lauren is out of practice. She hasn't been in the ocean or truly faced the chaotic reality of her life in years. She's currently staring down a massive, terrifying, potentially life-ruining wave in her marriage and her fertility journey, and instead of paddling into it, instead of doing the hard work of surviving it, she's looking for a way to scream, turn her back, and run away.
Which brings us to the boiling point of the story. The tension becomes entirely unbearable. Lauren is actively grieving another failed cycle. She is deeply resentful of Leo for wanting to quit IVF, viewing it as abandonment. She is grieving for Bonnie alongside Stone, sharing his proximity to death. And she is utterly intoxicated by the potent, heavy nostalgia that Stone offers.
It's a dangerous mix.
It is. One night, in a moment of sheer emotional overload, sitting in the front seat of Stone's car in the dark parking lot of the Trancas Country Mart she breaks, she seeks comfort in the easiest, most familiar place. She sleeps with Stone.
It's an act of profound betrayal against Leo, but psychologically it's an act of deep desperation. It's a flailing attempt to feel like she isn't broken, to reconnect with a version of herself that felt whole, desirable, and powerful.
But the fantasy of the past shatters the instant it becomes the present. The moment she gets out of Stone's car and walks back to the dark beach house, reality crashes down on her like a physical weight. She is hit by a massive, debilitating panic attack. The text describes it viscerally, the blood throbbing violently in her fingers, struggling to pull air into her lungs, the ground tilting beneath her. In the quiet aftermath of the affair, she realizes with absolute sickening horror that she has made a catastrophic mistake.
Right.
She doesn't want the past. She doesn't want Stone. She wants her husband, Leo. She wants her mundane, messy, beautiful, painful life with him. And she might have just destroyed it.
And this is where the generational inheritance finally comes into play. In the midst of this suffocating panic, she remembers the safe upstairs. She remembers the small wooden box her mother showed her when she came of age. She goes to it, opens it, and takes out her silver ticket, the ticket she has possessed since the day she was born. In a moment of sheer panic, driven by a purely selfish desire to erase her own moral failing, she presses the ticket between her hands and rewinds the summer. She erases the infidelity. She wipes it from the timeline.
She uses the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. And just like that, the air shifts. Suddenly she's back. It's weeks earlier in the summer. The affair never happened. She is standing in the house untethered from the mistake. And armed with the terrifying crystal-clear clarity of almost losing her marriage, Lauren's perspective entirely shifts. The wave almost drowned her, and she finally decides to paddle. She doesn't stay in Malibu to wallow in nostalgia. She packs a bag and immediately flies to New York to join Leo.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a really fascinating paradox in how Lauren uses the ticket here. She uses it entirely selfishly. She didn't use it to save someone from a tragic accident like Irina did. She used it to erase a moral failing that she actively chose to commit. It was a choice.
Yeah, she just panicked and hit undo.
Yes, but that inherently selfish use of magic yields a massive, profound realization about the trajectory of life. She sits down with Leo in New York, and she tells him she's done. She is ready to stop IVF.
She looks at him and says, I want our life back. We live in a society that constantly bombards us with the message that quitting is the ultimate failure. Never give up is plastered on every motivational poster. It's the core of the toxic positivity she experienced in the fertility clinics. But for Lauren and Leo, giving up is the only way to save themselves. Giving up on the relentless, soul-crushing pursuit of a biological child is what allows them to reclaim their family of two. It's a shedding of the desperate woman who is clinging to a sinking ship, dragging her husband down with her.
It highlights the immense power of relinquishing control. Happiness, as Lauren finally realizes in New York, isn't determined by stubbornly forcing the universe to give you exactly what you want. It's determined by deciding which things are truly worth holding on to and which things you must let go of to survive. By giving up the battle with her body, they get their marriage back.
And we see the immediate visceral joy of this realization. There's this beautiful breathing scene where they go out to celebrate their anniversary at Gramercy Tavern in New York. They have an extra $5,000 in their bank account from renting out their LA bungalow on Airbnb. They have no more looming predatory fertility bills, no more hormone shots in the refrigerator. For the first time in years, they are actually living in the present. They are looking at each other across the table, not at a calendar.
It feels like a massive victory. But the ticket's magic doesn't operate in a vacuum. Time is a complex, interconnected web. By rewinding the summer and changing her own path, specifically by not being in Malibu to fall into those old distracting patterns with Stone Lauren, Lauren inadvertently creates a massive ripple effect.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because she wasn't around to serve as an escape hatch for him, Stone was forced to face his own reality. Without Lauren to distract him, Stone spent all of his time focused entirely on his dying stepmother, Bonnie. He advocated fiercely for her doing the research, pushing the doctors to get her into a new experimental clinical trial. And miraculously, the trial works. Bonnie's body responds. Bonnie lives. Lauren's selfish use of the ticket didn't just save her own marriage, it inadvertently saved Bonnie's life. Sitting in New York, it feels like Lauren has engineered the absolute perfect timeline. Everyone wins.
It certainly seems that way. She has hacked the system. But the universe or fate or just the relentless, unforgiving nature of time demands balance. A superpower is only super if it can regenerate. A mingle token once spent leaves you entirely terrifyingly vulnerable to the next disaster.
And there is always a next disaster. Just as Lauren is settling into this idyllic, peaceful, new reality in New York, the ultimate tragedy strikes. She gets a phone call from her mother, Marcella. And the tone of Marcella's voice is entirely different from her usual anxious hovering. It's not a panic attack. It's the heavy, terrifying reality of someone who is watching the unthinkable unfold in real time. Dave, her vibrant, surfing, eternally optimistic father, has suffered a massive cardiac arrest. 2 of his heart bypasses have closed. He is dying in a bed at Cedars-Sinai Hospital.
Lauren immediately rushes to the airport and flies back to Los Angeles. And her first thought, naturally, logically, is the tickets. She knows she used hers. She knows her safety net is gone. But she also knows her mother still has one. She fully expects Marcella to do exactly what Irina did in Odessa, with the ticket is fundamentally meant for save the patriarch of the family, go back a day, demand a preventative stent, change the outcome, keep him alive.
But there is a moment in the hospital cafeteria that it completely shatters the reality Lauren thought she was living in. It reframes everything Lauren and the reader knows about her family. They are sitting in these hard plastic chairs. Lauren is demanding that Marcella go home and get the ticket, and the truth finally comes out. Marcella looks at her daughter and reveals she doesn't have her ticket. And the reason why she doesn't have it is the biggest, most devastating twist of the story. Marcella used her ticket 22 years ago.
This revelation fundamentally rewrites the history of their family. When Lauren was 15 years old, Dave didn't just have a close call in a car accident, he actually died. He was driving on Mulholland Drive, a teenager, on a cell phone, crossed the center line, and there was a fatal head-on collision. Marcella got the call from the police, went to the hospital, and was told her husband was gone.
And it was Sylvia, the wild grandmother, who came to the hospital, handed Marcella the wooden box, and told her she had the power to undo it. Marcella took the ticket, rewound time to the morning of the crash, and stopped Dave from getting in the car. She saved him. She lived the next 22 years knowing her husband was living on borrowed time that she had specifically magically purchased for him.
I want to spend some time on the psychological deep dive of this because it is brilliant character work by the author. It completely recontextualizes Marcella's entire personality. We talked earlier about how Marcella is anxious, tightly wound, constantly hovering over Dave with towels, terrified of him getting a chill or surfing too far out. Lauren always viewed this as her mother just being annoying or being a buzzkill to Dave's sunny disposition.
But it wasn't a personality trait at all. It was sheer, unadulterated terror.
Exactly. Marcella lived the last 22 years knowing she had absolutely no more do-overs. She had spent her safety net. She understood the exact shape, weight, and agony of the tragedy that was waiting for them, and she knew she was powerless to stop it a second time. Every single time Dave went surfing, every time he drove a car, Marcella was terrified of the invisible clock ticking down.
Yeah.
Because she used her net. Every single step she took afterward was paralyzing.
Think about it like walking a tightrope across a massive bottomless canyon. If you have a safety net beneath you, you might do some tricks, you might walk with confidence, you might not constantly look down, you feel secure. But if you fall and the net catches you and then the net disappears, getting back up on that tightrope is an act of agonizing bravery. Every single step is terrifying because you know exactly what the fall feels like and you know there is absolutely nothing left to catch you next time.
That tightrope analogy is a perfect encapsulation of Marcella's existence. As she tells Lauren, crying in the cafeteria, everything awful is on the other side of that ticket, just the relentless mercilessness of life. And this revelation is immediately compounded by the second massive family secret revealed. Sylvia, the 91-year-old matriarch who lived like a wild woman who marched and loved and traveled, she never used her ticket.
Sylvia, who everyone assumed had used it decades ago to fix a bad romance or erase a wild mistake in Finland, still has hers tucked away in the safe. And this perfectly explains Sylvia's personality, too, because she always kept the ticket. She always had a net.
Yes, and this is where the philosophy of the book gets really interesting. Sylvia explains that having the ticket, keeping it perpetually in reserve, made her feel like life was just a dress rehearsal. Because she always knew she had an undo button, she never fully committed to the stakes of reality. She could be reckless. She could leave her daughter to run off to Europe. She could march in dangerous protest because on a deep subconscious level, she believed she could always just fix it if it went truly wrong. It insulated her from the sharp edges of living.
See, I struggle with Sylvia's philosophy here because, yes, she lived a big wild life on paper, but did she actually live it? If you have a safety net, if you never feel the real permanent stakes of your actions, you're entirely insulated from vulnerability. And without vulnerability, can you ever truly experience real human connection? It almost sounds lonely to me. To be so protected that nothing actually touches you.
That's a really sharp distinction. Insulation versus actual freedom. Sylvia thought she was free, but she was really just floating above the reality everyone else had to trudge through. And realizing that her time is coming to an end and acknowledging the vastly different ways the ticket has shaped her and Marcella's lives, Sylvia makes a decision. We are at the climax of the story now. Sylvia decides to give her unused ticket to Lauren. She hands it to her on the dark deck of the beach house. Lauren now holds the power again. She holds the ultimate do-over. She can save her father.
Lauren brings the ticket to Dave's hospital room. She is completely resolute. She is fully prepared to rewind time to before his heart failed to force him to go to a cardiologist to get a preventative stent to buy him another decade of life. It seems like the obvious loving choice. It's what the ticket is literally for.
But here's the final devastating twist of the narrative. Dave refuses to let her use it.
He tells her no.
He does. And this is where the narrative resolves its core philosophical debate. Dave is lucid despite his failing heart. He looks at his daughter and calmly explains the reality of time travel, the reality of undoing a decade of history. If Lauren rewinds time by 10 years to fix his heart, she erases the last 10 years of his life entirely.
And those were incredibly happy years. He tells her, I don't want to take it back. I loved that decade. I loved my life. Since he stepped back from work, he and Marcella found this robust, romantic, deeply connected era of their marriage. They spent their time together, puttering around the house, walking the beach, taking trips. He does not want to trade the memory and reality of those beautiful years for a mere chance at different years.
And crucially, Dave points out the most significant casualty of rewinding 10 years. Lauren would never meet Leo. The timeline would fracture completely. She would be a different person in a different place. She would lose the husband she just fought so incredibly hard to reclaim.
This raises an important question about our own lives. How much of our lives, of the things we cherish most deeply, are built directly on the foundations of things we wish we could change? How much joy would we accidentally destroy if we tried to surgically remove our pain?
Dave is teaching them both a profound lesson from his deathbed. He's teaching them that pain, grief, and ultimately death are not mistakes to be undone by magic. They are the natural required payment for a life well lived. To erase the end of the journey is to invalidate the journey itself.
It is such an emotional climax. Lauren is forced to stand there and choose between saving her father and keeping her husband, keeping her present reality, and she chooses the present. She chooses the messy, painful reality of losing a parent. She chooses to put the ticket away and let her father go.
And we must recognize the incredible strength involved in that choice from both Marcella and Lauren. The text mentions hysterical strength early in the book, that superhuman adrenaline mothers get to lift a burning car off a trapped child. Marcella utilized a psychological form of hysterical strength to bear the secret of Dave's death for 22 years, protecting Lauren from that trauma, letting her grow up with a father who had no idea he was living on borrowed time. And Lauren ultimately honors that monumental sacrifice by accepting reality, by not forcing her parents to unlive their happiest decade.
There is a beautiful, heart-rending exchange right at the end where Lauren is crying and she says, I can't lose you. And Dave, holding her hand, just smiles and says, Lauren, you never will. It's a complete acceptance of legacy over physical presence.
It's devastating, but it's grounded in a very mature understanding of love. Which leads us into the synthesis of the story. It was the aftermath of this massive timeline-altering realization.
The aftermath is remarkably grounded. There is no magical cure for Dave. The ticket stays in the box. But there is peace. Sylvia passes away peacefully at home shortly after having finally given up her net. And Dave doesn't die that night in the hospital. He survives another 3 years before his heart finally gives out, passing away naturally. It gives the family a beautiful, unrushed ending. They get to say goodbye the right way without the ticking clock of a magical secret hanging over them.
And Lauren and Leo, they don't magically conceive. The universe doesn't hand them a biological child as a neat reward for learning their lesson about acceptance. Instead, they pursue donor eggs. They embrace a different path to building their family. It proves the incredible resilience of the human heart, that giving up on one specific rigid dream leaves room for another equally beautiful dream to flourish.
The ultimate lesson synthesizes the arcs of all these characters perfectly. Stone learns to stop running to the past and stay present for Bonnie's final chapter. Marcella learns that she can, in fact, survive the unsurvivable. She survives Dave's eventual death without a magical ticket to save him, and she keeps living. And Lauren learns that her marriage, her relationship with Leo, is her true home, not just the pursuit of a biological outcome.
It's a powerful subversion of the typical time travel trope. Usually the goal is to fix the timeline. Here, the book asks us to consider that the messiness, the pain, and the absolute finality of our choices are exactly what give our lives meaning and texture. The real magic isn't a silver ticket.
No, the magic isn't turning back the clock or experiencing spontaneous good luck to fix your mistakes. The real magic is living through it. It's the grit to face the relentless present, even when it's breaking your heart.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into, once and again, I want to bring this journey directly back to you, the listener. Think about the stone morrows in your own life. We all have them. Those romanticized pasts, those alternate timelines we sometimes wish we could retreat to when the present gets exhausting or expensive or painful. It is so deeply tempting to look back and think, if only I had stayed, or if only I hadn't made that one choice, my life would be perfect. But as Lauren's journey proves the messiness of the present, the struggle of the now is exactly what makes it real. It's where the actual living happens.
We spend so much energy trying to curate a perfect life, trying to avoid pain at all costs. But the avoidance of pain often leads to the avoidance of deep, meaningful connection. If you never risk the fall, you never truly walk the wire.
Exactly. So I'll leave you with this final lingering thought to mull over. It's the philosophical core of everything we've unpacked today. If someone walked up to you right now and handed you a silver ticket, an absolute ironclad guarantee that you could completely erase your biggest regret, wipe away your most agonizing mistake, would you have the courage to throw it away? Would you choose your current messy, scarred life over a pristine, unwritten one? Because as this story shows us, the only way to truly live your life is to live without a net.
A very provocative question to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep seeking out profound stories, keep asking the hard questions, and we'll be right here waiting to unpack the next one with you.